My name is Peter Kiernan, and I'm going to tell the story of how I connected with JR. And it wasn't a direct connection. I first connected with the aura balancers in Alamogordo. That is somewhat funny. The woman who sent me there had taken 300 LSD trips and had been balanced by these people, strange people in Alamogordo, and she said that they were fantastic, and I went from Vancouver, Canada to Alamogordo on her experience. When I got there, it was like walking home. I just definitely felt at home in this place. And so my ex-wife, who we had separated, she wanted to come. So actually the aura balancings patched up our marriage for a while. And there I met, I actually stayed in Ella Vivian's house. Ella Vivian Powers, and her husband was still alive at that time. And Ella Vivian had been taken off aura balancing, so she just looked like this mild mannered secretary at the time. I found out it was quite different later on when she's quite a powerful woman and fantastic. But my first aura balances were,
Do you remember the year?
Yeah, 1977, I'll say. That's close enough. And so the aura balancings were those 4-hour aura balancings, which were just fantastic. And that was a life-changing experience, just shifting from where I was to where I came when I came out of the aura balancings. They were like nothing I had ever experienced before, and it actually did patch up that relationship for another 10 years, I guess. In any case, I had a very strong connection with Robert Waterman, and I'm pretty sure we go back many lifetimes together. I connected with all the people there. I ended up staying for probably 2 weeks, and they had me sitting holding the light in those 4-hour aura balancings right away, and that was a great experience. There's something else here I remember one of the people I connected with right away was Mario Foley. And I remember, and Alamogordo is not a fancy place, but Mario and I went to, I'm thinking it's a Denny's or something like that, and we had a 7-hour coffee there. Both of us are good talkers, and we really connected well there. That was one of the people. And then the Whitakers and Carol Myers and some others. And so that was the first trip. But then Robert was going to form this college, which was going to be in Alamogordo, actually. That was the initial intention. And because I'm an academic, and he invited me to come down and stay with him and his wife at that time, and help with writing some outlines for the courses for the for the college that they were going to start. And so I'd come down and stay with Robert for 2 weeks at a time and help writing the outline for a college program with him. And that was, cemented our relationship quite well. And I kept coming down, periodically from Vancouver, staying a couple weeks at the time, holding, sitting in on the aura balancing, just holding the light. And that's a really good experience because you have to be totally neutral on what is being said, what's being cleared, and all you're doing is holding the light and not getting involved. And so I kept coming down, and I remember Dr. Nivedel was pretty sick at that time, and Ron Holnick was taking care. She was staying at Ron Holnick's house, and you'd go out and visit her. And I remember one time when she was really sick, because I had, just before coming down to these aura balancings, I had been taking a program, a health program. So I offered to do something for her, so she let me massage her feet, and her feet were like swollen, unbelievably big, and I just massaged them gently with loving. And I remember she said I had very healing hands. An interesting comment. And I do remember, actually I did connect with Ron also, and he wasn't married at that time, but we met his future wife, and I think I was actually eventually went down when they got was at their marriage, when they got married in the city, what is it, where the University of New Mexico is, south of Alamogordo. Then I'll jump ahead to
Albuquerque?
No, I visited Mario Foley at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, but it's New Mexico State University. And now I'm trying to jump ahead.
So where does this JR come in? How did you run into JR at this point?
Okay, well, I'd heard about JR from Robert, and Robert would tell me his stories of where he came from in California and stuff. So I knew that JR was Robert's teacher, and I knew that he was also Maria's teacher. But when Nivedel passed over, then Robert was going to go, and Ron were going to travel into all the places that Nivedel had connected with, and they were a different, they're more metaphysical, right? This goes back to the early 50s and stuff, that what was sort of acceptable at that time, or where she was, Nivedel Hunter was. In any case, Robert was connecting with all those people, and I traveled with Ron, myself, and Robert would do these aura balancings, and sometimes it would do 3-4 hour aura balancings in one day, and it was quite busy. But the trip went from Alamogordo to Los Angeles. And then at that time,
You remember the year?
that would be 1977. Definitely the next year. It could be 78, but I think it's 77. And I can try to correct that later. But in any case, Robert had an interview with JR and JR's staff at that time. And it was pretty funny because there was like a panel with JR in the middle and some staff members on either side, and then Robert in the middle. I know that I was on Robert's left, and Ron was on Robert's right, and the interview was mainly focused on the college, which was going to be called Quimby College, and getting advice from JR on how that should be developed and everything. And I always found it ironic that at that time Ron was not starting USM, but USM came out of that.
Wow.
That college. And I can't remember the therapy that I had taken a 2-month course in, but JR asked me what had I just done, and I told him that I had just taken this 2-month course, and that therapy ended up getting incorporated in MSI's services.
Nice.
So that was very interesting.
Would that be the polarity?
Polarity, yeah.
Nice.
Polarity therapy. That's what it was. I couldn't
nice.
remember that. I had taken a 2-month course.
That's my favorite one to do. Polarity balance.
We had the 2-month course was taught by people who were direct descendants of the person who invented polarity therapy.
Nice.
And that was in Mount Shasta. That's and that was what's called a Thomastic group of the thing, where they press and hurt. There's a gentle one, and there's a...
Are they cousins of Rolfing?
Yeah, right. In any case, so I thought I knew something about that, at the time, in any case, that's when I first met JR, but right after that meeting, we all went down to the basement, which was where the products were, and this was, remember, quite early.
That's Mandeville now.
No, it's in
Baldwin Park.
And no, it's in the it's in the
Prana.
Prana.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, but it's in the basement of Prana, which products are still there, but it was much more primitive. And Polly had her office there.
Wow.
And she was the secretary.
Good.
Quote, secretary for JR. And so we're down there and roaming around, and JR was down there, and I asked Robert, can I ask JR a question? And he said, yeah, sure. So I go up to JR and ask him the question, and JR looks at me and said, why are you so confused? And my heart just totally opened. And JR walked away right away. He didn't wait for any answer or anything, and I started crying, and then I go over and talk to to Robert, and he said, what happened? And I told him, and then I walked back, and then JR came back to me about 5 minutes later and said, now what would you like to know, or something like that. I don't remember the exact words, but he let that, my thing is he opened my heart. It was very strong. And then I did ask him some question which I don't remember what the question was, but and then he talked to me in a different way. So after that, then I went to Polly and I said, you know, I'd like to get on discourses, but I am doing this Indian meditation. Now, you know, this could be 1978. I'm not exactly sure, 77 or 78, no later. And but I'm doing this Indian meditation. Can I do both? And she said, well, just write a note to JR and then come back tomorrow and we'll see what the response is. And I came back tomorrow, and JR said it would be all right for me to do both. And my understanding of that, both then and later, was JR knew that I wouldn't use one against the other. I got that very strong, and in my personality, I know that that's correct. I wouldn't do one. And so that's when I first met JR, and I really connected with him in a very deep level, and started discourses. And that actually, I think I was on the way to. I did go around the world. When I went back to Vancouver, it was a time when you could go around the world on Pan Am.
So you're a Canadian?
Pardon me?
You're a Canadian?
I'm from New York, but I'm American and a Canadian.
So can we say historically you were the first Canadian initiate that met JR?
I don't know.
1977.
I was
You weren't
78 maybe.
But you weren't a Canadian then?
I was Canadian then, yeah.
Okay, there you go.
I had a Canadian citizenship.
So ladies and gentlemen, the first Canadian in the movement.
I didn't know that. Yeah, probably. That's
yeah,
right.
Probably, yeah. So you went around the world Pan Am.
I went around the world Pan Am, and it was quite the $1,000 ticket was had to fly to standby, and it was a magical trip because of all the places I went to and the things that happened. Like, I'm finding standby, and so you only get on the flight if there's room. And they have the old 747s, and I went to a math conference in Helsinki. I went around the world to this ashram and I went some places. I went to Assisi. I went to Istanbul and got out in one day because it was 3 weeks before they took over, and I went to India and back. But the reason that was sort of magical is I have a hard time sleeping on planes, and on every flight, even when they were almost fully booked, I got 4 seats for myself on a 747 and slept. And then there was one time I got so used to getting these seats. I said, "What's happened? I didn't get my seat," because I'm sitting in one corner of the 4 seats, and there's another guy in the other corner. There's 3 seats away from me. And I didn't get my 4 seats. As soon as they closed the door, he got up and went to his friends, and it was a lot of magic in that trip. So I was being taken care of. Sometimes you do get that magic in MSI. Not that that's crucial, but so that was that, and then then after that, I, we started, there was, I think other people in, Colette Kidd was probably the first Canadian. You remember, and this Korean kid, but
That's right.
Colette's her mother.
That's right.
And eventually, I was running some seminars. Just playing a sad or something, playing a JR thing. I'd do that, and my wife at that time had been raised a Catholic. I had been raised a Catholic too, but she had trouble with JR acting like Christ, and she felt that he was trying to take Christ's place, and she couldn't handle that. That was her block. And so eventually, about 1980, she didn't want anything to do with it, and that basically was one of the things that led to our divorce. And then so now, I would, I remember getting my initiations, going to California to get my initiations. I remember getting one initiation in California and one in New York, and etc. But I do remember Maria Foley wanted to do a workshop with John, the Christ workshop, and she could only do that work. John would only let her do that workshop if she had taken the Pat 1 in Arrowhead. So she organized the Pat 1. I was one of her friends. We got about 20 of her friends to go take the Pat 1 in Arrowhead so she could take it. So that's when I took Pat 1 in 1985. I remember that. And I remember taking a lot of workshops. So I'd go to California and take them. I do remember, on that one, my wife at that time, when I said I'm going to go to California and take Pat 1, she said, well, don't bother coming back. I came back, and no problem. So I was fairly determined, and trying to think. Then probably the next major thing was the first Living in Grace in California.
Mm-hmm.
So I took that one, and in that one, I seeded for taking the Pat in the Pat 7, or whatever it was, in Israel and Egypt and Israel. And my wife was German. She was actually born in Germany, and we had planned a 1 month trip in Europe, and so I seeded on Sunday for somehow getting this Pat 7 or whatever it called, Pat 4. What is it called?
What year was it?
1990.
So yeah,
it was the last one.
Pat 4.
Pat 4.
It was the year Saddam Hussein made a move on Kuwait.
Yeah.
1990.
So sorry for stumbling that. So I seeded. What I like about this story is I seeded a Sunday afternoon, and I got that I'm going to be able to go on Pat 4, which is in August or whatever, right? And we're doing this 1 month trip. So I get back to my house that night, and my wife Doris is her name, said, I think we should make that a 2 month trip in Europe. And I said, okay, well, we can do it, make it a 2 month trip, and then at the end, I'm going to go on this trip to Egypt and Israel. And she said, okay. You don't know how impossible that is by any normal circumstances, because she's against it. When I went to Pat 1, she said, don't come back, but in any case, so I signed up that day, and so it took a little bit more than 24 hours to get approved.
Wow.
So I like that has the spirit works, right? And so there was one thing now interesting in a certain sense of how things work. About 1987, I'm at Colette Kidd's house and watching a seminar, and it was one of those ones where there's a Spanish translator, and the Spanish translator happened to be Ina, and I'm seeing this woman. I'm married and everything, but I'm seeing this woman, and boy, she's really attractive, but that was just it, she's really attractive.
And you seated for that, didn't you?
I didn't seat for that. Not that I know of. So, in any case, that's just a little aside. So I did take the first Living Grace there, and I did go on this trip. But there was something interesting about that trip, that the European trip, that started something that happened later. Namely, when we bought a used VW bus camper, in Germany they don't buy used cars very often. Old cars, and you got it for $2,000 or $3,000, and we crossed over the Iron Curtain because the Iron Curtain had come down, and I'd been to Germany 3 or 4 times before this, and whenever you went into East Germany before, they examined you really carefully and were very because the curtain had come down. They didn't even want to look at you. You just drove through the East German things. In any case, drove into East Germany, then into Czechoslovakia, which was what Czechoslovakia was. So we get into Prague, which I really loved, and there's this guy walks into this konditorei, like a super Starbucks. That's what the konditorei is, and he looked important, and for some reason, I wanted to go up and shake his hand. He had big guys around him, which means he's, bodyguards, right? And it's this Václav Havel, which is a writer who became the first prime minister of the Czech Republic.
Yeah, JR gave him an award, the integrity.
Yeah, so, well, I wanted to go up and shake his hand, but I couldn't get that one. I couldn't quite get through. The guys were but we stayed the next day, and I saw him inaugurated. So that was the first one. So now I'm starting to run into celebrities. Then we go down to the other part of Czechoslovakia, so Slovakia now, and went into Hungary for Budapest, then back into Yugoslavia, and then cross Yugoslavia into Austria and Vienna. And in Vienna, I love Starbucks. I'm sure that I've had this experience of around Mozart time, so I knew where the Kaiser's konditorei was. I just parked, walked 2 blocks, and there it was.
Was that Salzburg?
Right? No,
that
that's
was
Vienna.
Yeah.
And then leaving Vienna, the next morning we go into a monastery. It's Monday morning. We go into a monastery, and nobody, that's a tourist monastery, right? I mean, and nobody's there, just my wife, my daughter, Natasha was 10 years old. And we're the only ones in the thing. And then all of a sudden, there's a line of cars that could see come in, Mercedes, right? And of course, the president of Austria and the president of one of the islands, Cyprus, get out, and they come into the building being toured. And we're the only ones, they closed it, of course, but we're already in there, so they don't close us. And then these two guys come into the little room we're in, and walking around, and we see these guys. That would never happen in the United States, where the president comes in and they haven't cleared out the room, right? When I say a little room, the size of this living room, right? So that's the second guy I'm running into, right? So there's something going on. So then we get to Frankfurt, and Doris's mother is with her, and Natasha, and I'm there, and all of a sudden I say, okay, Doris, I have to go get my plane to Cairo, and Doris's mother hadn't known that I was leaving, so I fly off there, and I got to Cairo a day early or something. The one thing that happened there, that's sort of interesting. I'm saying this part because it really is part of the traveler thing, that I was meeting these people for a reason. And so because of the war, the Arabs had a meeting in Cairo in the hotel we're in. So I see that Gaddafi's goes into the meeting. So I decide I'm going to go shake hands with Gaddafi. And then I didn't know it at the time, but Ina was other people. But I know I was the first one to invent this. And in any case, there were 3 levels of security. I asked the Egyptian government people, their guards, from them, can I shake his hand? And he said, sure. I asked the ones from the city, Cairo, yeah, sure, that's fine. And then I asked the Gaddafi's henchmen, no, you can't. They were like mafia guys, right? But I didn't care. So when he came out, I just reached my hand out and said, peace. Shook his hand. And Ina was right next to me, and I didn't know that, and she did it too. And there was probably 15 of us, 10 or 15 of us by that time. And I can't remember, I'm so bad on names, but the actress who's
Sally Kirkland.
Yeah. He was looking at Sally Kirkland all the time. He didn't care about us, but an attractive blonde woman, that was that. So that's
anything to get the spirit out there. So.
Right. So this is, I feel like this is part of what the traveler's doing with me is extending peace, and that's what I was doing all the time. Yeah. That's what in my consciousness was.
Yeah.
And then, so then things continued, and you know what that's like. But the one thing in there that was important was going into the Great Pyramid and going from the bottom up to I think it was the King's Chamber that the blessing took place, right? Mm-hmm. And then getting into the sarcophagus or whatever you call it, and getting a blessing from JR. That was very precious, I remember leaving when I got out of when I left the pyramid, yeah, and just walking down something, I said, this was worth this lifetime.
Wow.
pretty precious. And then we go to Israel, but I'm still on this. Okay, now I'm looking for places to go, right? And I don't know which the order was, but we go to the wall, the whatever that's called. Is it the weeping wall, or the wall? And then we went up to the top of the
I know what you're talking about. Temple Mount?
Temple Mount, and Teddy Kollek was the mayor of Jerusalem at that time, and he's a very popular mayor. And Morley Safer was doing a 60-minute program with him. So I had to forget who was with me. I don't think it was Jack Reed. It was somebody else. But I was smart enough to know that Morley Safer would not want us shaking hands with Teddy Kollek. So I told the other person, you get Morley Safer and I'll get Teddy Kollek. He got Morley Safer, distracted him so he couldn't interfere with me, and Teddy Kollek was more than happy to shake hands. So I shook his hand and said peace.
Unbelievable.
But now it gets even better, is because, and I don't know what the order of this, I think this was after that, but I want to get the Prime Minister shake hands with the Prime Minister of Israel, right? So Jack Reed and I are real good friends, and Jack had really seriously hurt his ankle, but he wasn't going to be stopped. So he and I go on, and we thought we'll go to the Parliament. So we go into the Parliament, and we did get in, but you have to be in a group. So there's a Russian group going into some building, some part of the Parliament. So we just tagged ourselves out to the Russian group, and then we found out there's nobody there, So we went and asked them, "Where's the Prime Minister?" And they said, "Oh, he's in this other building." So we go over to this other building, and they were having some demonstration at the front of the main entrance, but not knowing what we were doing, we actually bypassed that and went to the secondary entrance, and it's like a single little building with some guards, and you go in, and then they let you by, and you could go through a detector and everything. So I just walked in, and Jack's with me, behind me, and I just started to walk through the thing, and they said, "Where are you going?" "Oh, I want to meet the Prime Minister." And they said, "Well, who are you?" And he said, "Oh, I'm Dr. Peter Kiernan from Vancouver, professor, And he said, "Well, he's not available now, but his press secretary is, or something. We'll see whether he will meet you." And they called up and said, "We were." Well, now, remember, at that time, anybody would go to Israel, they were happy to get.
Right.
And Vancouver is very important. This guy comes to Vancouver a lot. So they said, "Sure, but you'll have to go through another level of security." So we've already passed one level, and they let us through to the third level. Then we do the real security, make sure we don't have anything or something. And we spent 15 minutes with the press secretary and said we were just there for peace and, wishing Israel well,
wow.
and giving them peace, and and that was that. And that was probably the last of the thing, except Lee Taylor Young and Sally Kirkland. At one stage, they knew that I was meeting all these people or something, and they had this actress with them, and they said, "Oh, Peter would like to meet me," and so they introduced me to the actress, and I was really happy to meet her, but they didn't tell me who she was, and it was somebody everybody knows. Bonnie and Clyde, which actress?
Oh, Faye Dunaway?
Faye Dunaway, yeah. But I didn't know who she was. But they forgot to tell me who they were introducing me to. So that was that portion of the trip, I guess. And then, of course, we got the last day, which, where you get the communion, and that was really special. And,
well, before we end, I love how this all ties into what Jared talks about, bring peace. And shaking hands and sending light does do a lot of work. As I've seen Jared do the same thing when we went to Russia and did it with Gorbachev and a bunch of people. But is there another anecdote you got? And then after the anecdote, just send Jared light, or you might want to say something before we.
Well, here's one little anecdote with JR. I have a couple like this. I don't know, I can make them short. I think you might remember I did products for 13 years.
No.
I did at Living in Grace.
No, I don't remember anything anymore.
Okay. Well, first they asked whether I could just be a cashier, and the program that they were using was terrible. So I ended up writing a program for them.
Nice.
And then it took 3 years to get the program really written and well, but it lasted for 13 years, and it was before Windows even. And it lasted for 13 years, and I did it up until the computer system was changed so that they could have the computer system on their laptops. Otherwise, for conference and everything, I had 13 computers running at times. But in one of the things that before Living in Grace, when they were up in San Francisco, when I finally got it written, and I got to share with JR, and I did tell him that the Traveler wrote this, and JR told me, "That's good that you recognize that." So that's. But the one thing I was going to say with JR with that was, it was murder writing it, getting it written in the first 2 years, 3 years. So after 2 years, I'm sitting there just desperate, and I was only getting 2 or 3 hours sleep at night, and I was really desperate. And then somebody comes up to my shoulder and says, "What do you need from MSIA?" And it was JR. He knew how desperate I was, and I said, "I will write a note at the end of the retreat, what I really need, what help I need." And then he said, and after that I got everything. JR told them something, and I used to take Mark and I would go to the MSIA's computer company, sometimes and deal with they're the ones that would transfer the stuff onto the system. That was pretty complicated in the sense that they'd have to take the output from my program and transfer it in. But it was very simple, basic program.
Yeah.
And actually, I can literally say that that's my key of making things simple. And then I got to share with JR and John a lot in Living in Grace. I could, obviously, when I'm assistant I didn't, but every other year I did. I think one of the reasons I did because I asked questions that are applicable to a lot of people. They're not just my personal stuff. Well, JR, I love you. I'm so grateful for all you've done, all you're still doing. And there's a part of me that knows how difficult that is. Not difficult in a certain sense, but how much it takes to do what you've done. And I have a great great gratitude and appreciation. It's not, it's not like just it's magic. It takes a lot, which you of all people know. Right? So keep me in your grasp. Keep watching over me.